What's up, folks? Casual Dad with another quick Warhammer Combat Cards video. Just looking at our Warhammer Skulls event. I love these. You just get short campaigns all week long. It's a bunch of time in the game, but you get great rewards, and they've done it again where a single win is a tier of rewards. The rewards are lesser, but it's so much faster to progress through it that I really appreciate that. So that's nice. I wanted to take a quick jump in at this because this is a max level campaign. So you jump in and all the cards that you have are max level, and it's a really fun time to toy around with some weird builds. So what you can see here is this is Melee Tau. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this real quick. Since they've been making some changes to Tau as a faction, releasing some new cards, they've really made Melee Tau pretty viable. You really can actually play a game as Tau where you're punching stuff. You do need high leveled cards, and it still is a little bit risky because Tau are just better at shooting. But especially with Aun'Va, and I'm trying out Aun'Va and Farsight because I just really want something to work with Farsight because I really like him. He was one of my first successful warlords. He's just not as good as any of the others just because his ability doesn't have the same kind of oomph. Aun'Shi in particular, let's wait for this. This is just, like, if you want a punchy melee card, 24 points for 4 shields, max level inspire, and 150 base damage, like, it's pretty nuts. And then he's got high hit points in addition to shields. He is good. And he's really kind of your, probably your single best melee card for Tau outside of the Warlords, and he's particularly good with Farsight because he almost certainly won't die in your game. By the time shields are cleared through, he'll be hurt, and then Farsight can heal him up near the end game. He's of course good with Aun'Va, but he doesn't really benefit from Aun'Va's ability as much because he doesn't take damage for the bulk of the game. Which is funny, that's the same issue that Aun'Va himself has. God, look at these things, they're monsters. And of course, any melee deck wouldn't be the same without your Krutoks. One thing I'm really hoping for, one of these days, I'm really hoping that they put out a Greater Narlock. I'm kind of hoping it's not quite super heavy level, somewhere medium in like the 60-70 point range, just to have something that is functionally a melee Tau card that's just an extra, something that's really melee geared. But even while we're waiting for that, these Kroot cards are easy to underestimate because they don't punch as hard at range, but they have good shooting and they have decent melee and decent hit points, especially for the cost. So you could really put together a pretty decent Tau melee deck. Doesn't necessarily compare to the others unless you really invest points in it, but it's fun to think about it, fun to try. And this one, of course, if you sprinkle in cards that have some ranged attack as well, as they take range damage, they'll end up punching a little bit harder with that because of Aun'Va's ability, giving them the beef to their attack stats based on the damage that they take. That's where Aun'Shi's not that great because he doesn't have a ranged attack. This guy's cool. I meant to highlight this. Since the rework, he's, I think, the only card I've seen that has a ready debuff. So when you play him, he debuffs your opponent. I think every single other ready in the game buffs you, but that is cool. The first time I dropped that, I was like, wait, what? So yeah, he's definitely a cool one to consider, especially if you're having trouble in upper ladder or something with melee decks. So there we go. That was one. That was one melee deck where you saw Aun'Va's ability come into play. Aun'Va himself obviously didn't hit the table. One thing some of the folks in my clan were complaining about, and I totally get it, is that in this campaign it's very difficult to actually build a deck that uses all of your deck points. So this one I've got 18 on the table, and then with my Farsight I was able to get it down to 3, but only by taking these two that really don't make sense in a Farsight deck, but we're going to do it anyway. Of the two, I do still think Aun'Va is the better. The only exception being if you really need to take down the opposing warlord, like if it's a headhunter. If the opposing warlord is squishy and you haven't cleared out the bodyguards, Farsight's going to perform better just because he can do that single target damage straight to the face. But that's a very rare case, and most of the time, Aun'Va's just going to be better. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Feed the Krutoks. And this, it's still probably going to be fairly easy. I wanted to run this just to kind of tweak these. Obviously, they're not full decks, but it is max points, so I can see how some of these cards perform in an actual melee environment. And they really do not disappoint. Even this guy. At max level, he's still throwing 30 damage, which is not bad at all. And then if you're against a shooting deck, he's got decent hit points, and he has that ranged at 2 and that precision shot, so he attacks on drop. It's not great. Like, it doesn't compare with any real dedicated melee cards, but he's cheap and has a nice sort of all-round utility. And again, is probably really good with Aun'Va because he can boost either ranged or melee, depending on what you're facing, what you're fighting against. And of course, for any melee deck with Tau, do not leave home without your crew talks. That guy, this guy, with Aun'Va, this thing is just nuts. Just that he gains the defensive damage buff for Aun'Va, and then also for Berserk, he just becomes an utter monster. Do a little debuffing. And yeah, I'll stop after this game. I just wanted to go ahead and run through these real quick and kind of show off the campaign, just so you got a chance to see the melee cards in action and kind of talk through that. That's something I'd like to play around with. And it is funny. I mean, the best one right now is going to be a deck with just your at least one Riptide, if not both, and Aun'Va, and that can become a melee deck or a ranged deck game by game, which is kind of cool. That it'll just whatever you're fighting against will kind of dictate which of your stats gets higher. And this is where, well, actually no. This is where Farsight shines. He's going to drop on the table and do a bunch of damage, but he's also not my last card. So I may not even punch yet. Yeah, we'll wait. Look at those hit points. Man, he's a beefcake at top level. Base attack 122. That's inspired. I am so glad that they gave Farsight a ranged attack. That really held him back. There have been a couple tweaks making it clear that Farsight's definitely on someone's project table as someone who needs some adjustments. He's interesting, but I just fall short. Especially compared to the other Tau Warlords, he really doesn't offer much beyond what they do. And just like Shadow Sun, since his ability only triggers when he hits the board, he's one of the older Tau Warlords, so the power creep has kind of left him behind. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a bit of a rework to his ability at some point, and I'd be curious to see what that ended up being. So yeah, there we go. That's it. We'll keep it short. Appreciate the time.